Hello, I'm Mac, at least for a day, and everything's going to be okay. This will be my review of Demon 79, a Black Mirror episode from season 6. Now, Demon 79, I would call it disappointing. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to spoil the entire plot. I'm going to be going through the plot and then analyzing it for themes and good parts, bad parts, giving my opinion of it. So if you don't want it spoiled, this is your warning. So yes, I would describe it as a disappointing episode because there's a lot of really good stuff in it. It honestly the whole episode is pretty entertaining. I watched it a second time to make sure it was fresh in my memory for this video, and I actually enjoyed watching it again, even though I knew what the end was. Basically, the ending kind of ruins the whole episode because it makes everything else that happened in the episode irrelevant, but we'll get to that. But it is a very enjoyable episode. The main character is very likable, and it's very fun to watch her change as the episode goes on. So the main character is a woman named Nita. She's of Indian descent. She's from India. Or her family is. I don't know if she was an immigrant. Well, actually, at one point in the show, they mentioned that she's been here for 20 years and she's 20 something. So I guess she was a little girl when her family moved there. Um, so she's very demure, kind of shy, quiet, kind of does whatever she's told. She works at a clothing store, and she has a fellow employee, a woman, who is extremely rude to her and extremely basically racist. Like she's not totally overt about it, but honestly, yeah, I mean, she's honestly incredibly racist, but you know, um, like a polite British person, except she's really not that polite about it. And the first time you notice this is Nita is eating her lunch in the back room where all the shoes are, um, and her coworker comes and said, "It's time for my break now," and Nita says, I'm still eating my break." And she said, "Yeah, I can smell it, but there's a customer, and if I start helping them now, it's going to cut into my break. So basically, you have to start your break early so that I can have an extra 5 minutes of a break and not have to deal with the customer." So she forces her to stop eating her food. She's got like a Tupperware container of, I guess, like curry or a similar um dish from her culture. And so she stops and, you know, does, like I said, she does what she's told, even though it's incredibly rude the way people treat her. So she gets up to go take care of the customer, and the customer is a man, and they talk about this before she goes out to help him. It's a man who murdered his wife. It was found to be manslaughter because um like she drove him to it or whatever. Like it wasn't premeditated, but it was like an act of passion or something. So obviously she's not comfortable serving a guy who's killed his wife, but she makes her go do it anyway. Like that was probably the main reason, is she didn't want to have to serve the other worker, didn't want to have to serve the comforter other customers, so she's making Nita do it. And then after Nita leaves, the the rude coworker like smells the air, and she's like, "Ugh, gross." Like she hates the smell of her food. So she serves the guy who killed his wife, and he's like really perverted. He's like flirting with her, and at the end he's like, "Can't you give me a discount on the shoes?" And she's like, "No," but he's like, um she says, "Well, we can put them away for you, basically put them on layaway." And he's like, "Okay." And then he's like, And if you put your phone number on the on she's like writing the layaway paper, and she's like, and if you put your phone number on there, I wouldn't mind. And she imagines her choking him to death. Um it's pretty funny, but she's just imagining it. So, and she just gives him the paper. She didn't put her number on it. She just gives him the paper, and he walks away and like kind of looks back with a lewd look in his face. And the rude coworker comes back out, and she's like, "I think he fancies your type." Um, there's a lot of comedy in this episode. I know some people will say they don't like comedy in a Black Mirror episode. Most Black Mirror episodes are very dark, and a lot of people haven't liked the episodes that do have comedy in it. I think it's fine as long as it has really solid themes and the episode really says something. My criteria for Black Mirror is they need to say something about society. And it's nice when they're sci-fi. This episode is not sci-fi, if you can tell by the name Demon 79. I mean, that could have been something sci-fi, but no, it's about an actual demon. So like the next day, the the manager or owner of the establishment comes to Nita and says, you can't eat your smelly food anymore because the smell will like get into the shoe leather or something. But the real reason, which he lets slip later, is that the other coworker complained about the smell of her food. Which, by the way, I love curry. I make food with curry seasoning in it all the time with the food service I get. So I don't know why some people don't like the smell of curry. I think it smells wonderful, and I like how my kitchen smells after I make curry dishes. And Nita's like, okay, but I already brought food today, like, and she says the name of the dish, and it's probably, something with curry in it or whatever. And he's like, well, you could go to the basement. Here's the key. And he gives her the key to the basement. And he's like, the original founder used to work down there, and it's like super far away from civilization. And she's like, okay, thank you. And she just gives into it and doesn't fight back. And then she imagines going over to the coworker and smashing her head into the display case, and like she's got like glass all in her face and bleeding, and then she tosses her down. Of course, it's just another fantasy as she's imagining doing that. So how she really feels about the whole situation. So then she goes downstairs to the basement, and she's not feeling very happy, but she gets out her food and she starts eating, and she looks at like some newspaper clippings that I don't know what they had to do with the plot. I mean, some of them are about like disasters that happened, but others seem to just be like random things. I don't know what the newspaper clippings were all about. But then I don't know why, but she's like getting curious about this old desk that she's sitting at, and she goes to open a little drawer. Oh, and I forgot to mention this episode is basically set in the 70s, maybe the 80s, probably the 70s though. So it's not not too distant future. It's the past. It's not really an alternate past, although we do eventually find out it's an alternate universe. It's not our universe, but we'll get to that. But it's the past, and there's no advanced technology or anything. But anyway, she's going to open the drawer on this really old desk, and she pricks her finger, and her finger starts to bleed. And then she still gets something out of the drawer, and like her blood gets on this stone rectangle, which it looks like a domino, and later in the episode it actually appears to be a domino. But she gets it out, and it's got like a fork on it, like a double fork. And it's got two prongs on it, but yeah. So she just takes it, and for whatever reason she keeps it and puts it in her purse and leaves with it. I mean, her actions there really didn't make much sense at all. Why did you open the drawer? Why did you continue to look in the drawer after you pricked your finger? It's basically a Evil Dead kind of thing. From what I've heard about the Evil Dead movies, someone always pricks their finger or something, gets blood on the the Necronomicon, and that's what starts the whole ritual. So it's basically the same kind of thing going on here. So she goes home, and the talisman starts talking to her, and this part is really dumb. I mean, this is the point where I realized, okay, yeah, it's definitely a supernatural thing. I talked about how we don't like that Black Mirror suddenly has supernatural episodes in my previous video when we talked about Maisie Day, which had something supernatural in it. But when I saw this episode, I had already seen Maisie Day, so I was used to the fact that apparently Black Mirror can have supernatural things in it. So the talisman is talking, and it's not like an evil demon voice. It's like a thick British accent. And so I'm thinking, well, this is kind of dumb. Maybe it's a ghost. Maybe it's the ghost of the guy that founded the clothing store or something. And his ghost is in the talisman, and that's why he has a thick British accent. But like, she freaks out and like drops the talisman on the floor. And the talisman, instead of having a two-forked, well, no, not yet, but yeah, the talisman still has a two-prong fork on it. So she freaks out, drops it, and he keeps talking, the talisman does, begging her to pick the talisman up again. So she finally does, and he says all this stuff like, oh, you started the ritual, and now the world is going to be destroyed if we don't make 3 human sacrifices. And he says all these things to get her to say yes, because he's still trapped in the talisman, and unless she says yes, he can't let her in, basically make her haunted by him. And he just basically tricks her into saying yes. And then when she says yes, the room gets dark, and like this really scary looking, stereotypical dark evil looking demon appears, and of course she screams and is so scared and everything. And he's like, oh, I better turn into something that is less scary to use. So he turns into, so earlier in the episode she was watching this like 70s disco show. There was this band called Boney M. I have to look up if Boney M was a real disco group or not. They're probably fictional, but one of the members is this guy, and he has like this big poofy fur jacket, white fur jacket. It's really funny looking. So he turns into that guy, and so the demon says like, I looked into your soul and I saw that you saw this recently, and that you kind of liked it, so I'm gonna be this guy now. So he's the whole episode he's got this goofy poofy jacket disco outfit on. And so he explains again that because she started the ritual with the talisman, and the talisman changed, it was a two fork prong, and now it's a 3-fork prong, which symbolizes she has to make 3 human sacrifices before the end of 3 days. So 3 human sacrifices in 3 days, or the world will end. So she freaks out, runs out of the house, runs down to the river for whatever reason, and he like keeps following her, like he can teleport all around because he's basically in her head. I don't think he can really affect the world physically, although a few times it makes it seem like he actually can. But so she's freaking out. She runs down the river. She's like, leave me alone. I'm going crazy. And he's like, no, come on, you have to kill somebody. And so this guy walking his dog comes up. They're next to the river, and he's like, oh, kill that guy. He's perfect. And she's like, no, I'm not killing anybody. And then he tells her that he like actually abuses his daughter, and he gives her a vision. Oh yeah, earlier he gave her a vision of her house burning and the whole world burning to prove to her that the world is really going to end if you don't do this. And of course that freaked her out more, and that's why she ran from the house. But then he gives her a vision that this guy like visits his 8-year-old daughter in her bedroom every night, and it shows him taking off his belt, obviously suggesting that he does something very bad. And so then she has a brick in her hand. That's like one of the few times it seems like he can affect the physical world, because a brick just appears in her hand, because normally it doesn't seem like the demon guy can actually affect anything. He's completely reliant on making her do any killing, but somehow a brick teleports into her hand. And after he shows her the vision of how horrible this guy is, she hits him on the head with the brick and he falls into the river, and his body doesn't float. That this part is pretty unrealistic. Like if a body fell into the water, it would float, but he just like sinks below the water and there's a bunch of bubbles to symbolize that he drowned. I don't know why they did it like that. They could have had him floating on his stomach with his back up to show that he had drowned. I don't know why he sank. It didn't make any sense. But anyway, so she killed that guy and now she feels horrible. She goes back to her house. The guy's little dog runs away. So she goes back to her house and like spends the whole night incredibly depressed that she's a murderer now. And the demon guy is kind of comical. This is a fairly comical episode, although a lot of dark stuff happens, like the vision that it gave her, and he's trying to convince her that it's a good thing. You're saving the world. The world's not going to be destroyed. You just need to kill 2 more people. That's all. It's not a big deal. And finally, he convinces her to go to work so that people won't be suspicious of her, that she didn't go into work the day a guy was murdered right next to her house. So she goes into work, and of course, you know, her coworker is mean to her as always, and he's like constantly trying to convince her to kill people. It's like, you could kill her, she's horrible. And then she's like taking care of an old woman, helping her try on shoes, and he's like, she wants to die. Old people really want to die. They want it to end. She's so close to death, you might as well finish her off. And it's driving her crazy. She hates him so much. She's like, shh, stop it, leave me alone. Like, he's so irritating. And so finally, he convinces her that she's got to pick somebody to kill. And like she ignores him all day, but then when she's back home in the evening, he convinces her, and then he says, oh, I know what you need. You need some liquid courage. So don't you have any drinks here? And she said, no, I don't drink. So he convinces her to go to the bar nearby, and she orders 2 triple scotches, and she sits to drink them. And then she sees the guy that killed his wife again. Like, he's there like looking at her lewdly and stuff, and he's like, he's perfect, he killed his wife. And she's like, I know he killed his wife. And so finally they decide that it's going to be him. So he goes out behind the bar and she follows him, and he is taking a leak by the dumpster, and he turns and looks at her and he's like, oh, you're watching me, huh? I knew you were a dark horse. And he says, why don't we go back to my place? And the demon's like, oh, perfect, nobody will witness if you do it at his house. So they go back to his house, and this scene is so awkward and so funny. I love it. This episode has a lot of good stuff in it, and this scene is priceless. So they end up, it's very awkward and very uncomfortable, but also hilarious at the same time. So they go up to his bedroom, and he's like smelling himself, and he's like, I'm gonna go wash up. So he goes into the other room to clean himself, and so she gets out her hammer. She got a hammer from her house. The demon said, oh yeah, you're a basher, you need to use that as your weapon. So she gets out the hammer, and she gets ready to like hit him on the head as soon as he walks in the room, but she freezes up, and he walks in and he sees her with the hammer, and he's like, are you gonna hit me with that? And she's like, uh-huh. He's like, oh, I knew this was gonna happen. So he sits down in the bed, and he's like, oh, I think I deserve it. I've had these horrible dreams. I loved my wife. I didn't mean to kill her, but I don't think I was a bad husband. And so finally she starts beating him on the head with the hammer and kills him. So that's the end of him. And then she goes downstairs, and unfortunately she didn't hear, another guy is there who looks a lot like him, is there in the kitchen, and the demon's like, oh no, he's seen you, you have to kill him, no witnesses. If you end up in jail, you're not going to be able to kill enough people before the world ends. So she goes after the guy in the kitchen with her hammer, and he freaks out and takes out a knife, and they end up fighting each other, and he drops the knife and she grabs the knife and he grabs the hammer, and before he can bash her with the hammer, she stabs him in the chest. So this other guy dies, who turns out to be the brother of the guy who killed his wife. And unfortunately, he wasn't a bad guy. He was just a normal guy, according to the demon. And so she goes home and she feels super guilty that she killed this other guy. But he says, well, this is good. You killed 3 people, so you're done now. You don't have to kill anyone else. And then they look at the talisman, and the talisman has 1 fork left. So instead of all 3 prongs of the fork disappearing, there's still 1. And he's like, what's up with that? All you have to do is kill 3 people. And so he dials 666 on her phone and talks to the demon on the other end. And so he hangs up and he's like, okay, so bad news is murderers don't count. So since that guy killed his wife, he didn't count. So basically, as soon as somebody kills someone, they're fighting for our team. So sacrificing them doesn't work. And she like gets really mad about that, of course. And then it's the next day. Okay, so something I forgot to mention, which is very important to the plot, but much earlier in the episode, before she meets the demon or anything, so there's an election going on, and there's several different parties running, of course. One is called National Front, which is like super racist political party that is like talking about getting rid of immigrants and all that stuff. And then there's this guy named Michael Smart, who's a conservative, and he's like doing your typical political speech outside, which the people really like, and everyone's kind of cheering for him. But then he looks at Nita, and it's just kind of like this weird look, like he doesn't like her, and it makes her uncomfortable, and so she walks away. And we'll find out why he did that in a second. So she goes into work, and she's basically decided she's gonna kill her coworker that is super racist and mean to her. So she's at work and she's like glaring at the coworker. But then so the political guy that was earlier in the episode, the politician guy, his name's Michael Smart, he comes, and the owner of the establishment is going to give a whole suit away to him for free because he's a supporter of him. And so the other coworker is trying on shoes with him, like helping him with shoes, and Nita is off in the back. She can hear what they're saying, and this part is really good. It's like one of my favorite parts of the episode. They're talking politics, the Michael Smart politician guy and the mean coworker lady. And the coworker lady is like, I'm gonna vote for National Front. Well, he asked her, are you gonna vote for me? And she's like, no, I'm gonna vote for National Front because I think they're gonna stand up for us and get rid of them, and he's like, yeah, but they're not going to get elected. And she's like, yeah, they can get elected. And he's like, no, they're way too overt. And then the line I like, this part is like really cool. Like, it's really dramatic and well done. He goes, do you know why I don't print stop immigration on my campaign literature? And she doesn't say anything because she's putting on his shoes. And he says, look at me. And she's still not paying attention, putting on her shoes. And he goes, look at me. And she looks up at him, and he's like, you know what I stand for. And then he's like, so do I have your vote? And that whole part is like super tense, and like you can tell he's super evil, even though he's like this super nice politician guy and a smooth talker and everything. It's like at that point you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's super evil. And like he's the kind of politician that doesn't act like he's racist, but he really is racist. And he's the kind of politician that really does end up hurting immigrants and all that stuff, because he can trick people into thinking he's good, but he's actually not going to name any names about politicians nowadays. I'm not going to get political on you on actual people, but I really like that. It's very good social commentary. Like this episode gets a lot of points for that, because that part is like making a really good point that there are politicians that will act like they're not racist when they really are. and don't listen to their words, look at what they do, because they're actually doing things that are hurting people. And so Nita overhears all this, and she talks to the demon, and she's like, show me his future. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, show me his future. I'm going to go out there and give myself up and go to jail, and then you'll be doomed. Because earlier the demon explained that if this fails, if the world gets destroyed, he's going to be doomed to a empty vacuum void for all eternity with no one to talk to or anything. So finally he gives in. He shows her his future and shows him through the years winning higher and higher positions in politics and like causing wars and causing, police to batter down people's doors and all these bad things happening. And one really cool thing that ties in with the rest of the Black Mirror universe, which this episode kind of messes that up, but cool thing in this part, one of the things she sees are the Metalhead dogs. So Metalhead was a Black Mirror episode that had these metal robot dogs in a dystopian future that basically just hunted people and killed them. So basically saying that he's going to be the cause of that future. If he lives and goes on to be a politician, he's going to cause a future where robot dogs hunt and kill people. So that was kind of a cool tie-in there, but it kind of ruins it later. So she's like, yeah, he's next. I'm gonna kill him. And the demon's like, no, my masters really don't want him to be killed because they really like him. And she's like, it's him or nobody. So one thing is, like, through the whole episode, there's kind of this motif of this mannequin in the store that has a red leather jacket, and it's like always showing that mannequin for some reason, because they're kind of just trying to point it out to us. And at one point Nita is cleaning the mannequin display and looking up at the red leather jacket, and the rude coworker comes over and is like, you could never pull that off. So as she's leaving that evening, she steals the red leather jacket and leaves her blood spattered jacket in its place, which is crazy. You're like leaving evidence of a crime because her jacket got all splattered with blood, killing the other two guys, the brothers. So she leaves her blood spattered jacket. She steals the red jacket, and she gets in her car and drives. So the whole time, another thing is, police have been investigating these murders. Obviously, there's this police woman and like a detective guy, and so they've been investigating they find the dead body in the river of the guy that hurt his daughter, and of course they find the two brothers dead in their house, and they basically end up finding that Nita is a suspect. Like, they don't have any proof that she did it, but she is kind of connected in different ways. So he goes to question her. She goes home, and the detective guy comes and questions her, and she does a lot of really well, it's kind of bad lying because he doesn't fall for it. I mean, he leaves. She lies a lot, and it's good enough that it gets him to leave, but he doesn't believe her. The demon says, because the demon can tell. The demon can read minds and see the future and everything, so he knows that the policeman still suspects her. But he leaves, and then she goes to where Michael Smart, the evil politician, is giving a speech, and so she waits outside until he comes out and gets in his car and starts driving out to the country where his house is, the cottage he lives at. So she follows him, but the police detective is there watching her and ends up following her. So it's the politician guy who has no idea what's going on. Nita is following in her car, and the detective is following her. But then the politician goes over a railroad track just as the arms are starting to come down. So Nita speeds and gets underneath the blocking arm things before the train comes. The detective gets stuck with the train going past, so the detective is stuck behind now, and he's like upset that he's getting far behind them. So Nita, they're driving out in the forest countryside, and Nita drives up into the back of the evil politician's car, and he's like, what's going on? And then she drives up beside him and she rams the side of his car, and um runs him off the road, and he crashes into a tree. And Nita gets out of her car, and she's like watching the car, and the politician Michael Smart gets out of the car and falls to the ground. She's like, oh dang it, he's still alive. So she goes and gets the hammer out of her car. And this is like my favorite part, because she's so badass. Like, she was so demure and shy and always doing whatever people say, but now it's like she's like this badass that has a red leather jacket and jeans on. She gets out her hammer and she's like marching over there to kill him. And he's like struggling to get up because he was just in an accident. And he's like, oh, are you here to help me? And she like hits him on the head, but it doesn't kill him. He just falls back. He's like, what are you doing? And then she hits him in the knees, and he's like, ah. And it's so cool. It's so funny, and it's so cool. It's like, this is like, it was so good. And it was like, yes, yes, kill him, because he's like this super evil guy that's going to be responsible for millions of deaths in the future. And it was so cool. And then they ruin it because suddenly the headlights of the detective's car start blinding them, and she stops, and the detective runs out, and he gets between her and Michael Smart. And she's like considering attacking the police officer because, in the UK, police officers don't have guns. Because that's just the way they are. So he doesn't have any way to defend himself, which is stupid, I think. But so she could have killed the detective with the hammer and then killed Michael Smart. But she's like, you're a good person, aren't you? And he's like, well, I try to be. And she's like, no, I can't do it. So she can't do it. She can't kill the detective. So she puts down the hammer, and the detective grabs her and takes her into the station. So they ruined that scene, because the scene was so exciting, because she was like really coming out of her shell, and now she's like gonna beat down this evil politician guy, and it would have been so cool. But the detective guy stops her, and so he takes her into the station, and they're in the questioning room, and she tells the whole crazy sounding story that, a demon is trying to get her to kill 3 people, and one of them didn't count. Of course, they know about the murders, and said, well, he didn't count because he killed his wife. Stupid. And they say, so the talisman you're talking about, is this it? And they show the talisman to her, and it's just a domino. And at that point, the audience, you're supposed to think, oh, maybe it was all in her head, maybe she is crazy, and everything. And she kind of thinks that too, and she's like, no, it didn't used to look like this. It's just a domino now. And so then the police officers leave. Oh, and also it ticks to midnight, and the world's supposed to end at midnight if she doesn't kill a third person. And it ticks to midnight, and nothing happens immediately. So the detectives leaves, and they're like, oh, she's really crazy. And like, yeah, the lawyers are going to say that she's probably going to not get a very bad sentence and whatnot. And then suddenly sirens start going off. So all the police officers in the station go to the window, and the atomic bombs are falling. So it's in the Cold War era, and like, negotiations have failed, and now everybody's bombing each other with nuclear bombs, and you see them falling through the window. So then, okay, so it wasn't fake. You're always kind of hoping that, maybe the demon was deceiving her all along. Either she was crazy, or the demon was deceiving her, and the world isn't really going to end, but now the world is ending. And this is the part that's really dumb. So the demon reappears. I forgot to say his name's Gop, Gaap. But anyway, so Gop reappears, and he's like, yeah, they're going to send me to a void of oblivion, and that kind of sucks. And she's like, I know I failed and everything. And then he's like, I was reading the fine print, and it doesn't say I can't bring a human with me. And she's like, yeah, but it's a void of nothingness for all eternity. And he says, no, it's worse. It's a void of nothingness for all eternity with me. And for some reason, this is the really dumb part, she's like, I guess I could try that. It's like the whole episode, he was just driving her crazy, constantly pestering her to kill somebody. Never once did they ever like each other in any way. I mean, he was kind of funny and the audience laughed about it, but nothing that he does she liked. She disliked him the entire episode. And now suddenly she thinks that spending an eternity in a dark void with him is somehow going to be okay. It's like, if I were her, I would take my chances with burning in nuclear fire than be stuck for eternity with a super annoying demon that I can't stand. So I don't know. It's a really dumb ending in that way. It's also just kind of dumb that it's really dumb that the world got destroyed, because that makes everything else that happened totally irrelevant. So at the end of the episode, the two of them are walking through the police station hand in hand, and the police station is like, turning red and then white because it's being destroyed by nuclear bombs, and they're like basically walking into the sunset. And I guess they're going to teleport into the void or whatever. And it makes it seem like it's a happy ending for them. It's like there's happy music playing and they're like kind of smiling as they hold hands and walk away as the entire world gets engulfed in nuclear fire. It's really dumb ending, and like I said, it kind of ruins everything. I really liked the episode the way it was done. If it had had a good ending, like either she had killed the politician guy and saved the world, or it turned out the world wasn't really going to end or something, it might have been an okay thing. But the fact that the world ends, everything else that happened is irrelevant. She sees the daughter of the first guy she killed, the one that was abused by her father in a really bad way. And the demon tells her, well, because you killed her father, she's going to grow up and have a regular life instead of committing suicide. She's going to get married, have kids, and be a grandma someday. But of course, that's not going to happen now because the world's destroyed. Another reason the world destroyed is bad is, like I said, it breaks the idea of a shared universe for Black Mirror. I mean, both of the Supernatural episodes kind of do that, but this one definitely, because that world ended in the 1970s, that means it's not the exact same universe as Black Mirror. If anything, Black Mirror is a multiverse where there's many parallel universes where these things are happening. But that's like basically saying any anthology series like Outer Limits or The Twilight Zone is a multiverse, because totally different things happen in each episode. I think people liked the idea that it was a shared universe, but now it's like it's definitely not. Maybe some of the episodes are in the same universe, but some of the episodes are an alternate reality. Because in this episode, the world was destroyed in the 70s. So it's definitely not our universe or the same universe as other episodes. But like I said, she had that vision of the metalhead robot, which means it's a connected multiverse where some of the same things happen in each universe. Like that universe would have had the metalhead dystopia or post-apocalypse if it had continued, but it was destroyed. So that means the actual metalhead universe is a closely related parallel universe. But whatever. Multiverse theory is silly, and it basically gives authors reign to make any crazy thing happen that they want. But anyway, I did like this episode for many reasons. I really liked how dynamic the character Nita was. She started out really shy and demure, and she turned into a total badass near the end, but it still got ruined by the detective, and she couldn't kill him because she doesn't want to kill good people. Although the fact that she didn't kill the detective means everyone in the entire world gets destroyed. So it's all stupid. So yeah. But I really like the social commentary, like the idea that some politicians pretend they're not racist when they really are. And things like that. And it's like the really dangerous politicians aren't the overtly racist ones. It's the ones that are secretly racist. Um, yeah. And yeah, like it was a really good episode until the end, and then the end ruined it all. That's why I say this is a very disappointing episode. So I would give this episode a 5 out of 10. It has a lot of really good stuff, but it kind of gets ruined. It has a lot of comedy, which is okay with me. Some people aren't going to like the comedy. I don't like that it has something supernatural, which kind of breaks the typical Black Mirror, but so did Maisie Day. But I did like, the main character and some of the other characters. Well, I guess I kind of like the demon guy because he's funny. And I like the main character, but I mean, everybody else in the episode was horrible people, basically. Except for the little girl that doesn't get any speech lines. But yeah, so 5 out of 10. Demon 79 definitely wasn't the best Black Mirror episode. It's one of the less good ones, but it has a lot of good things about it. It's entertaining. I do recommend watching it. I mean, you've had it spoiled for you already, so you should have watched it already if you didn't want it spoiled. But I do recommend watching it because I even enjoyed watching it twice. But the end really kind of ruins it, and it's just no fun at the end. So that does it for this one. We've got 2 more episodes in season 6 that I'll be reviewing, and they're the good episodes. So look forward to really good episodes that I'm going to be talking about that I really liked. But that does it for this one. So I've been Mac. Thank you for joining me for a day. And remember, everything's going to be okay.